You go to the market to get fish. There is a place that plays dub, reggae and music, regardless of the weather or time of day. The men there recognise you by now and keep a few buckets of fins and bladders under one of the tables. You've been a good customer to them in the past, so these slops are free of charge, although you occasionally offer £5, which is generally accepted. One of the men knows you by name. His is James. When you walk to the stall, James is bent over a frozen tray of cod, using his right hand to skim the excess water onto the street. He sees you and nods. His head is large and bold, and the nod he gives you is slight, which you suspect is due to the weight of his skull. He motions for you to come towards him, and you do so. James does not say a great deal, but he does ask how you have been, and you reply, as you always do, that you have been well. He nods again and looks at the 2 buckets under the table, which you take as a signal that he wants you to pick them up. You bend over and pick up the 2 buckets of wet slop, although James's silence and the oddly slow manner in which you lift the buckets makes this transaction feel troublingly significant. You tell yourself that this is not the case and focus on straightening your back. You do not have £5 on you today, and although James doesn't ask for it, you notice that he looks slightly forlorn, and you are unable to decide whether this is due to you not having offered him any money or is down to some other unrelated reason. Impulsively, you ask him if everything is okay. He looks you in the eye, pauses, and then looks down as he quickly says something about money. You assume this is due to the £5 and apologise for not having any cash on you. You say you'll bring £5 with you tomorrow, but he says it isn't the £5. In fact, he owes a lot of money to his landlord and doesn't know how he is going to pay it. This is the most James has ever said to you, and you are surprisingly pleased with this. You feel accepted by this man who sells fish, and you stand with 2 buckets of slop like a person who belongs completely in this situation. James continues to talk about his landlord, about how strict he is with payments, and about how James shouldn't have to pay him when he doesn't come over in the winter and the pipes are frozen and he can't turn the shower on. You ask whether there is anything you can do to help, which you do not really mean, but you ask it anyway. He doesn't say anything for a few seconds, but eventually he looks at you and says there isn't anything you can do about it, and that he'll have to get the money somehow. You wish him well and begin to walk back on the road towards your house. You walk away from the market behind a man in a black and red tracksuit walking a large, muscular dog attached to a chain leash. The hind legs of the dog stretch and quiver as it moves forward, and you remember reading in a magazine that some dogs lock their jaws when they bite, and that the only possible way to get it to let go of you is to stick a finger up its bum. You suddenly notice the sound of James's voice calling out to you, which causes you to stop, and, turning, you see that he's close behind. You ask whether you left anything in the marketplace. He says that you didn't. They only came to help you carry the buckets back to your home. You have always carried the buckets on your own, and although you may not be particularly strong, you have always managed it without a problem. You say to James that you are all right with the buckets, and he gestures towards the pavement, which is wet with slop. You look towards the market and see that you have been spilling splashes of liquid for a while. Although you are not sure why James is helping you, you feel embarrassed enough to accept his offer, and he grabs hold of one of the buckets by the handle. You both walk behind the man with his dog, and you ask James what he knows about getting a dog to let go of you once it's locked its jaws around your leg. He suggests punching it in the nose, which he says also works for sharks, and you tell him that apparently you have to stick a finger up its bum. James gives you an odd look and asks with great sincerity why you would ever do that. You reach your house, which you rent with your wife, and place the bucket on the ground where you search the outer pocket of your jacket for your keys. You thank James for his help and make a joke about fish that he doesn't laugh at. He has a forlorn look in his eyes again, and you aren't sure what to do, so you invite him inside for a cup of tea, which he eagerly accepts. You both enter and make your way to the kitchen. You boil a kettle while he stands looking at the magnetised letters on your fridge, which spell out Batman. You tell him that you couldn't find any letter N's, and he nods. You pour the boiling water into the cups and ask him if he wants sugar. He says he does. You ask milk, and he says yes. You hand him his cup of tea, and he asks you if you are married. You tell him that you are, and he asks where your wife is. You tell him that your wife is out at work. He asks what you do for work, and you are beginning to get annoyed with all these questions, but you tell him that since you lost your job, you've mostly been staying at home, working on things. Naturally, he asks you what these things are, and you tell him that you can show him that you should finish his tea first. As you say this, you notice that he has fashioned the letter N from 3-letter I's. James is happy that you have noticed and smiles openly for the first time that day. You close the door to the basement behind you. You thank James for carrying the 2 buckets down the stairs and then flick the light switch on to reveal a large tank of water. James takes this opportunity to tell you that it really means a lot to him that you've let him into your house, that he really needed something to take his mind off the problems with his landlord, and that he is very grateful for the tea you have given him. You tell him that it's okay and turn to walk towards the large tank of water that rests in the middle of the room, the sides of which are made from sleek, dark blue rubber. Standing next to the pool, the sides of it reach up to your chest. Use the palm of your right hand to gently slap the surface of the water. James is watching, and he says you have done a good job in making such a large tank, and although you casually thank him for the compliment, you are secretly proud of what he has said. There is a dolphin on the other side of the tank, and the slapping of the water causes it to slowly move towards your hand and nudge the tip of its nose against your index finger. It makes a sound somewhere between a squeak and a crack, which James imitates. Although the basement is relatively bare, there is a raised wooden platform with a small ladder next to one of the walls, and on the platform is an old brown sofa. You motion for James to climb the ladder and sit on the sofa while you move towards one of the buckets of slop. You pick up a slimy piece of fin and keep it in the palm of your hand while you move back to the tank and slap the water surface 2 times. At this signal, the dolphin moves into the centre of the pool, where it dives downwards so that only its tail is above the surface. With a practiced effort, it begins to shake its tail backwards and forwards, as if it is waving, which causes James to become suddenly animated and shriek wildly with joy. The dolphin swims towards the side of the tank, and you drop the piece of fin into its open mouth. You clap your hand 3 times, and the dolphin swims back into the centre of the water, and this time it twirls around like a spinning top before coming back to the edge of the pool. You pick up another piece from the slop bucket and slide it from your palm into the dolphin's mouth. The dolphin cackles, and James whoops and laughs and slaps his thigh. You clap loudly 4 times, and the dolphin disappears beneath the surface of the water. Sweeping dramatically to the other side of the pool, you pull a thin piece of rope hanging from an overhead beam. As you do so, a red hula hoop descends towards the pool like a plastic celestial halo. James is silent in anticipation, although his breathing is heavy from all the excitement. With a sudden rush, the dolphin breaches the water surface and flies upwards through the air towards the red hula hoop. It passes cleanly through the hoop and descends back into the water with a splash. For a split second, James is completely speechless, and then with a vital energy, he stands and shouts, "Yes!" over and over again. You are happy that the routine has impressed him, and as his shouts of yes become fainter, you are left with a glowing warmth and tell yourself that you made the right decision to train a dolphin. James wants to see more, but you tell him that the dolphin needs a break, which he eventually accepts. He asks you whether you have anything to drink, which catches you slightly off guard, but you're still feeling happy with the performance, and tell him that you have some beers in the fridge upstairs. The lack of natural light in the basement makes it hard to tell what time it is, and your head is feeling heavy, so you rest on the back of the brown sofa. James is telling you about a long-term girlfriend who recently left him. He tells you that they used to share a flat, and that they were very happy together and had bought all types of furniture, but now that he is alone, he can't afford the rent and he doesn't know what to do with all the furniture. He tells you that you are very lucky to be married, and that you should treasure your wife and never take a single day of your life together for granted. He says that it is a great thing to be in love, and then he bends over and begins to cry. You feel a great surge of love for this man, and you gently pat his large back and tell him not to worry, and that it will all work out in the end. After a few seconds, he raises his head and sniffs and says thank you. His eyes look sore and wet, and his lips are coated in drool, but you smile with genuine affection and place your hand on his shoulder. He finishes his beer with one large gulp and casually drops the empty can onto the floor with the others before reaching to the side of the sofa for a new one. You have also drunk quite a bit, but are now feeling quite sleepy, so that you rest your head on the back of the sofa and stare down at the tank of water. You can see James's face out of the corner of your vision, and he is also looking at the tank, but with that forlorn expression. You take it upon yourself to break the silence and begin to tell him about how you managed to train a dolphin after reading a book on the subject, about how it's fascinating to learn about how when broken into manageable steps, you can train a dolphin to do a very complex routine. James does not respond but continues to look dejectedly at the tank and raise the beer can in his hand, which is shaking slightly. Not knowing what else to do, you continue to talk about the process of training a dolphin and say that maybe it is getting late and that maybe James should make his way back home to the market stall. James says he saw a dolphin on a TV show once, and in that show they had a child go into the water and the dolphin went under the child and lifted the child before swimming around the edge of the pool. You say that you have also seen that, and James asks whether your dolphin can do it. You fumble for words, but eventually say that you have never practiced it with the dolphin, and that the dolphin is unable to do such a thing without proper training. James grins and eagerly asks whether you can train the dolphin to do it now, which you say is definitely not a good idea, and that you should probably go upstairs. James is now standing and taking his t-shirt off, followed by his trousers and socks and underpants. You ask him what he is doing, but he has already run towards the tank and is gleefully scrambling over the rubber sides, causing water to spill onto the floor of the basement. You stand and begin to run over the tank to stop him, but you forget that you are on a platform and fall to the ground with a crash. You pick yourself off the ground and feel a sharp hotness from your lower lip, which is torn and bleeding down your chin and onto your clothes. You cup the lip with your left hand and feel that the cut isn't too deep, but it definitely hurts and makes it hard for you to shout clearly to James, who is standing still at the inner edge of the pool. The dolphin is on the other side of the tank, staring intently at the naked man opposite it. You move to grab James's shoulders and pull him back towards you, but he sweeps your hand aside and tell you that he works with fish for a living. You tell him that dolphins are mammals, but because your lip is cut, the words come out slurred and elongated and sound more like door frames and murmurs. With his back to you, he takes a step forward and gently pats the water and makes a cooing sound. The dolphin remains where it is, its mouth slightly open like it has told a joke and is waiting for a reaction. Both its small black eyes are fixed on James, and you decide that you will never really know what animals think. James pats the water once again, but the dolphin continues to stare without sound or movement. James pats the water with greater intensity, and when the dolphin still refuses to move, his shoulders visibly sink. You tell him that things will get better, and that he should come out of the pool, and that you will call a taxi so he can get home okay. He must have understood what you said, because he begins to shout about how he doesn't want to go home. He shouts about how his landlord will be there waiting for him with a knife, and how he'll be living like a rat on the streets any day now. His body trembles and you see the strength of his shoulders fall apart. He quietly tells you all he wants right now is to be like the child in that show who rode on a dolphin's back. He moves forward in the water, and the dolphin is now squeaking and splashing away from James towards the edges of the tank. You grab the side of the pool and try to pull yourself up, but the rubber is slippery and it is hard to get a good grip. James now has both arms around the dolphin and is struggling to wrap his legs around its body. The noises the dolphin is making are guttural and piercing, and occasionally muffled as its head is pushed into the water. You manage to climb to the edge of the pool and throw yourself in, but your clothes make it hard for you to move quickly, and now James is punching the dolphin in the face. You reach his naked body and use both your hands to pull him away from the squealing animal, but his grip is tight and his skin is wet and you fall backwards. You try to hit him in the back of his bald head, but all this does is make him weep and shake as his face is pressed tightly against the grey surface of the dolphin. You stare at this man as he desperately clings to a terrified sea mammal, and you feel your heart break. The dolphin's tail is splashing so much water that it makes it hard to see anything, but you can see James's back, and you can see his spine snaking down towards his coccyx. You watch as the muscles of his buttocks stretch and quiver under his skin, and before you know what you are doing, you've forced an index finger inside his anus, and you're pushing all closer to muscle. James lets out a loud wail that continues to hold onto the dolphin as you jab your finger roughly in and out. Your upper arm is slapping hard against the surface of the water, which hurts slightly, but you do not care, and can only think of that repeated jabbing motion as your fingers push angrily and irrevocably forward. With a last, forceful drive, you finally manage to stop him, and James releases the body of the dolphin, which floats towards the walls of the tank. Both of your breathing is heavy, and both of you are shaking, and you watch the ripples of the water become less and less present until the surface is completely still. Eventually, James moves towards the edge of the tank before climbing onto the wet floor of the basement. With a patient buttoning, he quietly puts his clothes back on and says that he is sorry. You You do not really know how to reply to this as your mind is spinning, and you sadly look at this man who, standing there with his eyes unsure, looks so human, who you're not sure whether to understand or if it is even possible for you to understand. You say that you have £5 upstairs if you would like it. He says he doesn't and instead walks over to the platform and climbs up on the sofa. You sit next to James and look at the 2 buckets of slop, and you decide that tomorrow you'll throw the contents of the buckets into the toilet. Just as you come to this decision, James passes you a can of beer, and in complete silence you both watch the lifeless body of the dolphin drift from one side of the pool to the other.